WSN.com, the World Sports Network. Make sure you guys check it out. So, Grant, we have the college football playoff national championship coming up 6 days from today, college football national championship. Should be a good one. We have Miami basically hosting the Indiana Hoosiers, and what should be a good game. First question for you, Grant. Who is going to have more fans in the stadium, Indiana or Miami?
Indiana. Yeah. Have you seen the way that they've been traveling? They took over the Rose Bowl. In the semifinal Oregon's a big brand, and it was way more Indiana fans there. In Miami, when they were in the NBA finals a few years ago, they weren't selling out their home games. You look at the stadium here, Miami sports fans are just the worst because they're not actual sports fans. The real Miami sports fans don't live in the heart of Miami for the most part.
Well, I would agree with that for the pro teams. I think the college, at least, there's a lot of fans in the area. I think the college kind of has more pull right now, at least, than the pro teams. Would you agree with that?
Well, probably, but even still, look at the stadium. They don't sell it out.
No. And you know what kind of Miami fans fall into? Like the Cowboys, the Dodgers, the Lakers. I feel like they're kind of that brand. A little bit to a degree. Like that's the college. Like I don't think, like if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan, I don't think you support the Dolphins and the Heat. Like I feel like you lean more towards the Cowboys and the Lakers and those big brands, because there was a period there where like Miami was that big brand in college football, obviously, and they're getting back to that point.
No, I think you're probably right in that.
Yeah. So Miami is currently a pretty hefty underdog here. They are, let's see, plus 8.5 now against Indiana. I think it opened 6.5, jumped to 8.5. This is just crazy to think that we have an 8.5 point underdog in the national championship game for a team that's been dominant, took down Ohio State. Obviously, they've been really, really good so far, but Indiana has just been that much better. So how do you see this one playing out on next Monday night?
I mean, Indiana has been so good. I had it written down and I deleted it. So let me pull it up on ESPN. Indiana has been so good. They have outscored just two playoff opponents 94-25. That is ridiculous. And I'm sure at some point we're going to have the Kalen DeBoer conversation. We're going to have the Dan Lanning conversation, especially. I know you enjoyed that because you were getting strays from Mateo Uiagalelei's father and all the Oregon fans. But Indiana has just been so unbelievably good that every good thing that's been said about them, it hasn't been enough. They have upheld it all. They've been vindicated. People said last year they had the cupcake schedule, and they did, to be fair, but people say that, and then it's the Big Ten. They're not playing the same SEC schedule and yada, yada, yada. Indiana has just dominated everybody in their way. And then on the flip side, they're going against a Miami team that is the total opposite. People weren't sure they were even going to make the bracket. Then they go on the road. Carson Beck really doesn't even have to throw the ball. They take down Texas A&M. They beat the national champions. And then against Ole Miss, that final score was close. And Trinidad Shambliss, that guy's probably going to play on Sundays. At least he's got a chance. But Miami dominated that game. And somehow or another, they had to make a game-winning drive to come out on top. And Carson Beck did it, which is a big step for him because he barely threw the ball in the first two rounds. And then all of a sudden, it's on his shoulders. You got to pull off a game-winning drive for us to move on to the national championship game, and he did it. So you can't say enough good things about either one of these teams right now.
Yeah, it's been a great run for both sides, and I think Indiana may be getting a little too much love here, realistically. I mean, 8.5 is a lot of points. They're more than capable of covering it. They've pretty much done that against most teams this season. But when you look at Miami, how they match up against Indiana, they're almost a miniature version of what the Hoosiers are. Like, they're not as talented at quarterback. I'll take Mendoza over Carson Beck any day of the week. I think top end speed wise, Miami has a little more of it than Indiana, but like physicality wise, Miami can play with Indiana on any given day on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So that's the reason where I think Miami may have a chance to hang around in this game a little bit more. But when Indiana gets going, it's like that slow suffocation, even against Oregon. Like, don't get me wrong, it was whatever. They were up 28 points at the half. It was a blowout. But when you start on a pick six and then it's just, consistency, like Oregon goes 3 and out, Indiana gets the ball and scores. It doesn't feel like a boat race. It just feels like that suffocation that, if you don't score here, like the game's over or very early in it, because they're just going to lean on you and continue to run the ball and continue to put up points.
Yeah. Oregon against JMU, Ole Miss against Tulane. That felt like a boat race because they were having 3-4 play scoring drives. with Indiana, to your point here, it'll be a 15-play drive, but they're going to score every time. And then you're going to go 3 and out, or, maybe you'll get near field goal range, and then they're going to get a sack on 3rd down and push you back, and you're going to have to punt it to them. So I get what you're saying there. It's not first pick in the draft type stuff. It's not 80-yard bombs to Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. It's very methodical, but they are just so relentless, so meticulous, so focused on their details that over time, that's how you end up with these scores.
And you can't make mistakes. And that's what we saw in this Oregon game. It would have been a lot closer if there weren't the turnovers. Oregon turned it over 3 times, 2 fumbles, 1 interception. Obviously, it led to a touchdown there on a pick 6 early in the game. But you just simply can't make mistakes because Indiana isn't. So every mistake that Indiana's opponents make, it just feels so much more important in the game because Indiana doesn't get penalties. They rarely turn it over, and they just play consistent football. Where on the flip side for Miami is going to turn it over more. They are going to make more mistakes. Carson Beck is going to throw a ball that should be picked off. Like, again, I can't tell you how many balls Carson Beck has thrown this year that should be interceptions. And I love Carson Beck. Like, kid's a dog. He earned that one the other night, but like he either throws a hospital ball or an interception, like one every, 10 attempts, 8 attempts. Like they are there consistently throughout games for the taking. And I think Indiana is going to be able to take advantage of those in this one.
Yeah, at the start of that game-winning drive against Ole Miss, there was one kind of up the seam, and I think we talked about it, but he had his hands on his head, like he just missed him for a touchdown. It's like it was 5 yards behind him, and he has a lot of those. And Indiana is so good and so opportunistic that, to your point there, he makes one of those and they're going to capitalize on it. And that's where I really get worried for Miami. If that's what happens, if Carson Beck could show up and he could play a great game because he's got so much experience, but he could also just continue to do what he has done, which is put the ball in harm's way to a certain extent. It's not been punished, but putting it in harm's way. And Miami has been a team that's top 10 in the nation in turnover differential. So if they're in a situation where they're in the negative and they're playing behind against this Indiana team, that's a problem. That's what we've been saying all playoff long. Miami doesn't want to / can't play from behind, and that will be challenged against Indiana.
So how surprised would you be if Miami wins this football game, scale 1 to 10?
Well, so the way that I think it needs to go is I think they need to get the ball first, and I think they need to go score, and they got to hold Indiana to a field goal, or if Indiana scores, they got to score again on their second drive. That's the path, and then it becomes a clock control battle and things like that. How surprised would I be? I would be surprised because Indiana is favored, and pretty much the entire country is backing Indiana to win. You look at the sportsbook betting splits, all of them are reporting like 88% of bets and of the money is on Indiana at -7.5. So not even just backing Indiana backing Indiana to win by more than a touchdown. So I would be surprised just because I think there's more that Indiana can do than Miami, but their physicality has shown up in numerous times in this bracket. So if they come out and they shocked Ohio State, Indiana shocked Oregon. If there is a shock factor in this game, if Miami can replicate that, then they could go out and win the game.
Yeah, I would probably put it at like a 6 of shock factor if Miami won the game. Like there's definitely a path for them. And I thought, honestly, the way Indiana beat Oregon, though, was more surprising to me than Miami beating Ohio State. Like Ohio State hadn't really been tested. Like Julian saying maybe not that guy. And we knew Miami was as physical, if not more physical than Ohio State. So that game, like that spread was a little lofty because of the brand, I think more so. But the way Indiana put BTA on Oregon was just insane to me. That was a wild result. And it was because of turnovers. And if you play that game 10 times, you're not getting that score probably more than once, right? But just the way the game went, how composed Indiana was, that was a little more surprising to me and made me and a lot of other people realize too. We knew they were legit, but this was the moment where like this could be one of the greatest college football teams ever. And they're all 24 and 25 years old too, which also helps that factor.
Well, yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, 25 is a stretch, but I get the
23, 24. They must
23,
have
24. Yeah. 24. And that's completely shifted roster building. And I liked what you've said. You've said this a couple of times on recent videos, but when you're given a 4-star, a 5-star, when you're touted as that in high school, that's 4 or 5 years ago compared to some of these other players. I started lifting weights 6 years ago, and I made the most progress I'd ever made in my first year, because everybody does. Everybody should, because you're starting from nothing. But me, if I was to go fight myself 5 years ago, I think this current version of myself would win pretty badly. So when you do have 23, 24-year-olds who are just so physically mature, who have, even beyond that, they've been in study halls, they've been in team meetings, they've just adapted to a more professional sort of mindset and approach to the game, they are going to have a leg up against this 5-star 19-year-old. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this shapes modern roster building for the contenders moving forward, because Cignetti's been a bit of an innovator in that area. But yeah, to get back on track here, Indiana, they're just playing so well together as a team. Everything they do supports the next man on their roster, and it's just a joy to watch right now.
Yeah, and that's something that I think the Big Ten's done a really good job of. Even the ACC, it's like, we need to find the pieces that fit together, where the SEC has been more so, we need to find the best pieces. But the Big Ten, and especially Indiana, is like, we need to find the group that goes really well together. And they've done that, and credit to them. And, they are an 8.5-point favorite in the national championship game. So it would be a shocker, obviously, if they were to lose the game. But out of all the matchups in the bracket, I genuinely think Miami is the toughest matchup for Indiana.
I think that it should have been Oregon. The way it's played out, it would be Miami, because Miami is confident, and even in going in there, I'm sure they were telling themselves they could beat Texas A&M, but they didn't know, and they did it, and it was 10-3, low-scoring game. Carson Beck barely threw the football. That Ohio State game, just the way it started to, Keontae Scott's pick 6 after they'd score, and you think, wait a minute, we can win this game. And then they did it, and they won by 10 points. And then they go against Ole Miss, and again, it's a close game, but they dominated Ole Miss. So I think they now have it in their minds, no, that team that we said we want to be, that image, that's who we are. We can actually go out there and do that. And so sometimes football is simple. There's been so much innovation with schemes and play calling, and the rules have changed, but the same thing that applied in 1940 applies right now, which is where if you have a line right here and a line right here, whoever wins that initial push is more likely to win the play. And what Miami's been doing is they've been pushing the line, every single offensive line, defensive line, they've been winning that point of attack. Now, Indiana has done the same thing, but Miami's going to give them the biggest challenge out of everybody they've seen. And Indiana can be better than Miami everywhere on the field, but if Miami is winning the point of attack 7 times out of 10, that is an equalizer. That even potentially swings it in Miami's favor.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you there. I think looking at the bracket now, Miami is the toughest matchup. It should have been Oregon when you look at just pre-bracket, obviously. It could have been Alabama too, honestly, when you look at pre-bracket, and that was obviously debunked by Indiana. There were a lot of teams I think people thought could play with Indiana. This Miami team right now, in my mind, is the only team that has a chance to stay with them. And Oregon too, like that game, I don't think Oregon ever really believed they could win that game. Like, even in the press conferences too, like we talked about with the pressers, like just the comments that were being said when you're talking about having to get revenge on a team, and we're going to show them what we get. Like those are just insecure comments. Like they're comments that you don't truly believe you can go out and win the football game. I forget who it was. It was the linebacker, the kid.
Botcher.
Yeah, whatever his name is. They asked him, who would you rather face, Alabama or would you rather face Indiana? Because their game was played before the Rose Bowl. And he was like, I'd rather get, Alabama, they both be great games, but I'd rather get our revenge, get back against Indiana. Like that's just stuff you don't say when you truly believe you can win a football game. And we saw they had no chance of winning that game.
And then you compare that to Mendoza after they beat Alabama 38-3. He's like, Alabama's a great team, man. They made us work for it. It's got a respect for everybody in there. They told him live that they were playing Oregon. He said he didn't know up to that point. He's like, oh, we got Oregon. Oh man, they're so good. I can't wait to get out there. It's going to be fun. Blah. They're focused on themselves, and that manifests itself in just the way they handle everything. They don't talk about other people. They don't worry about other people because they're not focused on them. They're focused on themselves.
Yeah, what they do. And that's been the biggest difference with this Indiana team. Off the field, on the field, they do everything right. Like it is just flawless execution from the press conferences to just how they played the game. So I think Indiana should win. Now on the flip side too, Miami does pretty much everything right as well, from the press conferences to the game.
Yep.
From what we've seen right now, the one thing Miami does poorly is play down to bad teams. They do that all the time. They're not going to have that problem here. Obviously, Indiana's a good team, but Miami is just the miniature version of Indiana, I think, in pretty much every aspect. So it should be an awesome game.
It's funny to say that just because Miami has more money. Well, I mean, Mark Cuban's in the mix now, so that's probably on hold. But Miami's been the much bigger brand. They're closer to the recruiting hotbeds. Indiana should be a miniature version of Miami.
Yeah, and for most years, that probably would be the case. Not this year anymore. And honestly, like, Mark Cuban gave him money last year. He gave him more money this year. It's an undisclosed amount. Nobody knows. But if you're getting 24-year-olds who are under the radar kids, like, you don't need a ton of NIL money. Like, I can't imagine this roster is loaded with just millions and millions of dollars. They obviously have money, but when you just have a team of 24-year-olds who maybe are 3-star kids, like, you have 7 4-stars on your team. Nobody's going out there and paying 3-star kids that much money. So Indiana's just said, hey, we're going to get older, bigger kids. And that's what they've done.
Yeah, it's quite genius in multiple areas.
Yeah, definitely. Go away from the stars. And again, the stars are given by rivals recruiting writers. Like, they are meaningful. Like, all the top draft picks are usually 5-star, 4-star kids, because you see how fast and physical they are and they develop throughout college. But as far as just putting a great team on the field, you don't need that. You need experience and age. And, you've seen how Indiana's attacked the portal so far this year. Like, they're not going after 5-star kids. Like, they got their quarterback, don't get me wrong, but a lot of these kids that they're getting are under the radar guys, 3-star kids, just 24 years old, 23 years old, a lot of experience wherever they played. And they obviously have a top tier portal class right now.
Yeah, we'll see how that evolves when the COVID year still a thing at this point, or are we past that? I don't know, because some kids are still getting like 7th years and stuff. When we are back to legitimate 4 years, maybe 5, we'll see how this Indiana approach, we'll see if it still works as effectively.
Yeah. But again, by that point, you just pay who you want, because you're going to get Mark Cuban involved and be good to go. And people want to go to Indiana. Also, too, Indiana fans are so nice. Like, you pick against Indiana, nobody says anything nasty against you. Pick against Oregon, it's like, you got, like, there's Oregon so insecure. We didn't even talk about that. Oregon so insecure. You got Daddy DJ Uyangale coming after me. His kid can't play football. Well, the defensive end can, I guess. The quarterback fan, DJ sucks. Anyways, I won. Sorry.
I won.
Sorry. I said, what did I say? I said Indiana. I said Oregon's in trouble against Indiana. Indiana is a bad matchup for Oregon. That was the text on the screen. And it was a terrible matchup for it. It was the worst possible matchup they could have had. I just said the facts. And now, nobody, you know what? Nobody even came back to apologize to me. I didn't like that.
You know what? There's got to be some accountability on the internet. Personally, I love it. I love when people come back and say, I was wrong, or like, your team won, or hey, Duck fan here, congratulations. That's like 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million on the internet. But shout out to those people, because it's cool to like talk shit and debate and everything. That's what sports are about. But when you start getting genuinely personal, or you're actually trying to like make someone feel bad because they don't like your team, and then you lose, you got to go apologize. You got to put your hands up, say, you won. I lost. It is what it is.
I had one, before we get into the NFL, I had one where I went back and I was like being like, what, just little comments like, ball guy doesn't know ball. I do, or whatever. So I said one thing back to somebody. I can't remember what it was. It was just, a harmless comment. And the guy goes, I still have more money than you. And I went, and then I go back at him and I'm like, if you got time to comment on my post because you disagree with a take that I give, and then you reply with that, you don't have that much money, man. You got too much damn time on your hands.
I had a really funny one. So I was talking about Commanders something or other with somebody, and I replied to someone with my take, and then this other guy who wasn't involved in the conversation came in and left like 4 straight replies, calling me an idiot, say I didn't deserve to speak about the team. And he's like, if you disagree, I have season tickets, dropped his location in the stadium. Come here, fight me. I'll fight you anytime that you'd like. And I didn't respond because I was like, what is the point here? But I'm thinking to myself, this guy thinks I'm going to go pay money to go to a game to fight him and then get banned for life from watching my favorite team. That was genuinely his thought process. Well, someone else saw that and they replied and they said, bro, shut up. You need to carry a gun to feel like a man. And that did it for me.
There's a lot of good comments out there, but people take it so seriously. And then when they lose, they get upset. There's a few comments too, like guy doesn't know ball. Is like, if you're commenting guy doesn't know ball, or like podcast equipment needs to be more expensive, like the two just stock comments, you got to like rethink your trash talking a little bit. You got to innovate.
Yeah, it's people being bored. They want to, honestly, what it is a lot of the time people want their opinions to be known, but they don't have the equipment. They wish they did, and they just don't have it.